ghosts, psychics, pendulums, curses, hexes. We welcome you here to Friday Night Dark in the realm of the night. Come join us and listen to this week's presentation, and we bid you welcome. Good evening. This is Drew, and I welcome you back to Friday Night Dark. Hey, tonight I'm going to be talking about movies. That's right. I talk about them all the time in practically every segment that I've brought up since its inception of Friday Night Dark. And you should know that because I always make reference to certain movies. From The Entity to The Exorcist to, what's that one I like to talk? Oh, Ghostbusters is there. I do make book references like to Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft, but I also make references to TV shows. And there was this extended conversation I had with someone who was a paranormal investigator, and it was very casual. We weren't talking about ghosts, believe it or not. We were just talking about things. And in there, somehow, we were talking about TV shows and movies and how some of them seem to have more issues than others. And it came from the whole idea of the Avengers. And although I didn't necessarily see that in the list, there are other ones that are in there. And so, to be honest with you, I figured it's time. It's time to talk about movies that have a reputation of being cursed. And really, honestly, there's a lot of movies. I mean, well, actually, it's not a lot. Like, there's not hundreds. It boiled down, depending on which way you want to look at things, there's about 10 altogether that do make the list. And of them, the top six that are in there are ones that people know. And honestly, I've seen, well, all of them. But anyway, I also know that in watching all those movies, I've made references to them. And I've talked about how people want to do things and what have you. Even when I'm just casually talking to people about solutions, sometimes I'll even say, well, if you want to do this, let's play a game. And, I use that weird voice, and then people know exactly what I'm talking about. The same thing would be for, jokes and everything that happen, because those very things that people make reference to in lampooning, they're acknowledging the more serious side of what's going on with those movies. And I'll get to that in just a second. But I guess the compelling thing, an example, was a TV show. And yeah, there's a few that I found, but it didn't seem something that I really wanted to completely talk about. But I'll give you a prime example. There was one we talked of, which was Different Strokes, which is a TV show that was popular in the 80s. And the main focus of that were the kids that were in there, the girl who played Kimberly, the guy who played Willis, and of course Arnold. And of course everyone knows the catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" So yeah, that one I know in a lot of ways kind of caught some eyes and attention to a lot of people. Now, certainly I can tell you that in the process of the whole thing, there was this evolution of issues that came about. And that is that for Kimberly, I know she was identified that way. Hey, it's Kimberly from Different Strokes, that girl, yeah. And it was the product of a 911 call, and they had reported that she had died of an overdose. Willis, the guy who plays Willis, should I say, he's always had trouble with the law, and still yet the person who played Arnold, I know he's had his own issues, and he's also had people who had called from time to time over various issues, ranging from incidents where he was working to just his over sensationalized fate when he moved here to Utah. Ironically, I had told someone jokingly, it looks like he followed me here. I've never met the man. but I can certainly tell you that it's one of those things where I think if I could, and if I could get past possibly the hostilities, as some people put it, that he would give you, I really think that him and I would be able to hit it off. But I'll never be able to put that to the test. Anyhow, I had heard from a lot of folks in both in Los Angeles as well as in Utah about that he did come off as somewhat abrasive. I don't know why, um, to be honest with you. But then again, these are personal accounts that I did get from both locations. And in one thing I probably say here is that I think that that pretty much made things difficult for him. So, yeah, I think the whole show itself might have had its own jinx, and so it stood out as one of those shows. But ironically, there were more movies I could find easily than TV shows, and so I decided I would go this way. And so, just to give you an idea and a general gist of the top six that I had found, as far as movies that did have really weird things that happened and were jinxed, were the following. The Exorcist topped the list, and then, of course, there was The Omen, and then Rosemary's Baby, which came out before The Exorcist, but apparently that's one that did stand out. And then there was Annabelle, which came out in 2019, The Possession, which is in 2012, which actually covers an idea of a Dybbuk box, but I'll get that out in just a second. And then, of course, rounding out the bottom six is Poltergeist. Now, if you've seen any of these movies, which I'm pretty much betting you have, then you'll know that they all have reputations one way or the other. Their significance wasn't necessarily the way the movies were made, but perhaps by the things that happened during the production of these movie sets and also the after effect once the movie wrapped up. And that's where the story begins. Now, as I mentioned, depending on how you want to look at it, I know there's 10 or maybe even 17 films. It would be based on the idea of whether or not they were supposedly cursed or they had paranormal ideas. I just kind of went with the rumored to be cursed. And so it did kind of lessen it down to about 10. And if you really start to change the language in the research of that, you would probably find more. Hundreds more, I'm sure, but these were the most well-known movies and reputed just not only by their issues, but also just by the context of the movie itself that was played on the silver screen. So, getting to the whole thing, I know The Exorcist, I know part of the reason why it was notorious and at the top is because of a mysterious set fire that destroyed everything except the girl's bedroom. That would have been Regan, that's the name of the character. And there were, in fact, multiple cast crew injuries and deaths that did take place. Second place was The Omen, and that had an issue because there was a lightning strike on a plane. There were animal attacks and a fatal car accident that mirrored a scene in the film, and I know that one very well. Other ones, Rosemary Baby, that one, the producer's medical emergency with hallucinations, the murder of Sharon Tate, and other tragic coincidences took place. Annabelle, which was in 2014, the cast reported objects moving and unexplained noises and other disturbances that took place. The next one in line was The Possession, which had cold drafts, exploding lights, and crew's unease around the actual Dybbuk box subject matter. The thing that's interesting there is I did once an investigation on what would have been a Dybbuk bottle. It didn't really produce much, but I'm going to tell you it was kind of fun, and yet at the same time I was a little anxious because I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to run into. And well, nothing. But that's what happens, right? Someone out there I know was screaming, "Sucker!" But there you go. Now, at the last and the bottom of that list was Poltergeist. Now, this one was widely discussed due to multiple cast deaths and eerie production lore. And really, honestly, the last thing on there about the one scene with that pool when the mom falls into the pool that was just dug out but not finished, and it's raining and whatnot, and you see all these skeletons and whatnot. Yeah, there you got some creepy things about that, and we'll definitely touch on that in just a second. Now, the ones that I decided to keep in that whole list was Poltergeist, The Omen, and The Exorcist, respectively from the bottom up. And so let's start with The Exorcist because I know that one people know very well. The the idea behind it is that you have someone who was talking to a Ouija board of all things, and she becomes possessed. And as you look at the progression of movies thereafter, there was all kinds of things that took place, but the number varies by source. But this is the most notorious things that were kind of dragged out of it. Now there was Jack McGowan. He plays Burke Dennings in The Exorcist, and he died of influenza complications before the film's release in January of 1973. It goes without saying that the the character he played, if I'm correct, also meets his demise in the movie. So there were some people that said that it was kind of brought on by that. Then there's also Vasiliki Maliaros. I can't say that name right, but that's Father Damien Karras' mom. And she died soon after filming was wrapped up for that. Now, there were other ones that were connected to the production who also died, leading to claims of up to 9 deaths associated with this particular film. And so the clustering itself, especially among characters who die in the film, fueled the idea of a supernatural shadow hanging over the production. Now, as I mentioned before, there were other things that had come up in the process, and one of them happened to be that there was a priest who was reportedly brought in to bless the set daily. This was because there was some really weird stuff, and as I mentioned, there was a fire and there were injuries where some crew members demanded the set to be formally exorcised. Now, the problem with that is that, according to what I know, you can't actually exorcise a house or an object. It has to be a person. So I'd like to know what they did, but I'm sure they probably said, okay, we'll do something. And I really honestly, I won't, laugh at it too much because I get the seriousness of it. I have a friend who underwent a whole bunch of stuff and weird paranormal experiences after visiting a place that was haunted. And it was later determined they had an attachment. And so, yeah, I see why they probably did this, and they, listened to them, because you're doing a very serious subject with a very serious history that was based on some very true facts. Not completely. It wasn't a true story. It was still fictional. But you get my drift, hopefully. Now, there was Ellen Burstyn. She played Regan's mother. That's Regan, that's the possessed girl. And she suffered a permanent spinal injury after being yanked violently by a stunt wire. And I know that was something that when that happened, people thought for sure that, it was going to be a big deal. But I understand that lots of rehab and lots of issues, but I don't think it turned out completely well, but I don't think she was, doing anything crazy after that. Now there's Linda Blair, and she plays Regan. She's the possessed girl, and everyone pretty much recognizes her even now. She's also well known for doing a TV show called The Scariest Places on Earth, and she actually was side by side, and this is why I chose the Poltergeist, is because the little lady that goes and clears the house in Poltergeist is also the same woman that plays side by side with Linda Blair in The Scariest Places on Earth. So you can kind of see where my bias went and why I chose what I did. Hopefully you see that. If you didn't, well, now you know. But I know for Linda Blair, she also actually fractured her lower back. And during a convulsion scene that this occurred, it actually led to long-term spinal issues for her later. So if you ever wondered why she never did anything really like major or whatnot, that was part of it. I know people jokingly ask me, did her head spin around? Well, no. As a matter of fact, I know a comedian who used that somewhere. and I'm sure enough there's people out there saying, oh, Drew, you shouldn't say that. But unfortunately, the truth is that I know people lampoon this particular film. Leslie Nielsen did it. Repossessed, I think, was the name of it. Two other ones that made light of the movie on several occasions, and I can probably bring them up, but I'm going to move on because you can see that it already shows you how this movie gained some of that reputation. The next one in line I'm going to mention here is The Omen, and it's Omen crowning achievements in itself because of some really weird stuff that took place. So, to give you an example, the special effects designer, John Richardson, created the iconic scene where a character is decapitated by a sheet of glass. And then what happened is that months later, while working on another film, Richardson was in a car accident. His passenger was decapitated in the same fashion. Now, the crash itself occurred in I can't even talk today. The crash itself occurred 66.6 kilometers from a town called Omen. Yes, it's spelled almost the same. It's Ommen. There's two M's in it. And the incident itself is widely cited as the moment the cursed narrative was locked in for that movie. To be honest with you, I don't know what's scarier, the fact that he actually designed the scene or that it actually happened to his passenger in almost the same fashion. To be honest with you, if you've ever seen the movie and you know which scene I'm talking about, it's not pretty. But here we go again. Now, the film's animal scenes that were in there in The Omen became dangerously real because there was that scene with the Rottweilers, and a stuntman was badly bitten by a Rottweiler during the cemetery attack scene. And that did actually get some newspaper notoriety, but I also know that there were some folks that said, yeah. I mean, I think it pretty much also made Rottweilers a little bit scarier than Doberman Pinschers at the time. And there was a movie called The Doberman Gang that I watched once where I was thinking, yeah, this is, they instead of going in with weapons, or I think they did, but they didn't do anything more than just hand a note, and then the dogs did the work. And then they trained the dogs to do whatever. The problem is that they kind of lied in some ways, but I don't know. It was really a confusing movie, I think. I just know that the people that planned the robbery got busted, and the kid that took care of the dogs is the one who walked away with all the money. Go figure. Anyhow, there was another thing that happened with baboons, and it was the safari park scene when they went berserk and they terrified all the actors. But then apparently the next day, a zookeeper was killed by a tiger at the same park. And this happened like literally the next day. So was it just something bleeding over from what the baboons were doing? Did they tell the tiger to do this? I can't say. But in either case, it does present the idea that perhaps maybe when you bring in a certain type of energy that you're going to actually create a certain result. And I think this is one of those movies that actually hits that. Now, there's one other thing that really stands out the most about all of this. And what stands out is a particular scene with I can't even talk today, with a private jet. And what I mean by that is that the jet that was originally supposed to be chartered for one of the people in the film crew was reassigned at the last minute. And so that same plane would actually hit a flock of birds. It would crash onto a road and it killed everybody on board. But then the weird part was it also collided with the car carrying the pilot's wife and children. So this was the exact plane that was supposed to be used to filming that day. And I understand that it kind of mirrored some things that happened on the movie. So to be honest with you, if I was to be scheduled for a scary movie and someone even approached me with it and they said, oh, you're going to do a podcast and then you're going to get a lightning strike, I would literally just say no. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to suffer a lightning strike while I'm sitting here talking to the people who bother to listen to me. No. So there you go. But those are the things that I think cemented The Omen. And I'm sure there's probably other ones, but as I mentioned before, it's just one of those things where you would probably have to watch the movie and then do some digging yourself. This is one I had fun with, but I didn't want to get too caught up in it because, unfortunately, movies I like to watch, and that meant that I'd be watching really scary movies and probably not sleeping like I should. Anyway, there's also Poltergeist. Now, Dominic Dunn, and she plays Dana Freeling. She was murdered by her ex-boyfriend in 1982, and it was just months after the first film was released. I'm meaning Poltergeist, not Poltergeist 2 or 3. But there were things that happened on the successive films as well. Now, Heather O'Rourke, Carol Ann, she died in 1988 at age 12 from an unexpected intestinal abnormality and septic shock. And it was only months before Poltergeist 3 was released. And the weird part about that is she had been interviewed and said, hey, how do you feel about, being in a movie that talks about the dead and those from the other side? And she said, I'm not so scared. She says, as a matter of fact, when my time comes, I wish there was a way I could convey my experience and let people know it's okay. She was very forward about it, too. I mean, she really didn't seem worried about it. And then it was like weeks later, and then the news came out of what happened to her. I remember seeing that interview, so it still sticks out in my head. Wow, Now, there was Julian Beck. He played Reverend Kane. He died of stomach cancer in 1985 during the production of Poltergeist 2. And I understand that, there were folks that had said to me, well, that's just how it is, onesie twosies. No, there's more. The crew interviews and retrospective features, they mentioned that there were strange mishaps during Poltergeist 2. They had like a heavy, uneasy feeling on the set a lot, and there were accidents and unexplained technical issues that took place all the time. And the guy who played Will Sampson, the guy Will Sampson who played Taylor in it, he died in 1987 from complications after a heart-lung transplant. So there was a lot of things that, were brought on by it. But the last creepy thing that I thought, and this one made my skin crawl, literally, because one of the most infamous revelations in that is that there was a muddy pool scene. And this one I was talking about, where the mom dives in looking for Carol Ann. And, she dives in looking for her, and what ends up happening is that these actual human skeletons start to pop out of the pool in the water. Well, there's a little thing that was found out later, is that they actually used real skeletons. These were people that they sourced from medical suppliers because they were cheaper by far than getting plastic replicas. I know. And now it's coming from Steven Spielberg, and I like to quote another movie of Jurassic Park, where the guy who made the park said, I spare no expense. And honestly, I always thought that Steven Spielberg spared no expense. But anyway, I guess I was wrong. No, this was one of those movies that became very infamous because everyone knows Spielberg for E.T. And then this came out. And so I think a lot of people were just like, wow, you went from one extreme to the other, but yet they were still outfringed on the ideas. One was UFOs, one is, what's it called? The ghosts and the paranormal, if you will. And, if you really think about this for a second, that wasn't his first go at it, because he actually directed Close Encounters. And if you remember that movie, he talks about what happens when E.T. lands and they have a little conversation, not necessarily a picnic or anything, but just, they communicate with music. And it still made a deep impact on me because, as in one movie, when E.T. landed, he didn't just come to the main character, he came to me too. Now, it was a movie. I would like to think that movie in itself, it did do something, and that was, it made me think, what if? And it was kind of quasi-addressed by another movie called Contact. And I'll probably talk about that another day with another subject, but we'll go there another time. Anyway, getting back to the jinxed movies here, or cursed movies, or whatnot, these definitely went there, and there's a lot of different ones. I'll give an honorable mention to Phantasm because the guy who designed the balls that float around and they would, like, get people and do weird stuff to them ended up getting, like, he died in a freak accident with devices that were very similar to the things that he designed. True story. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's like art imitating life, or is life imitating art? I can't tell you. It's what it is. There are several instances in these, and you can certainly look these things up. You can find them. I certainly had a lot of fun doing this because now I've got more information that I could probably, as they say, shake a stick at. And I really think that, if anything, not only will you find stuff maybe about a movie that you know and like, but you might also find one that had some things you didn't know before. And knowing and watching all the movies in the Poltergeist scene, I've seen all 3 of the Exorcists, and yes, I've watched all 3 of the Omens. That's the other reason. So 3 by 3 by 3. It made sense that I picked these, and I did have more reasons to it because that touches on angel numbers and all that. I know, it's just weird. But why I'm bringing all this up tonight is because these are movies that I know people know. And these are movies that actually had weird stuff happening. Whether it was meant to or not, it was unintentional, I'm sure, as they say in the disclaimer of every film. But at the same time, they incur these reputations because of all these weirdness type of events that did take place. And frankly, I think that ensconced them in a place of notoriety, and also in a place of being immortal, in the sense that they touch on supernatural subjects that people, I think subconsciously fear. And so with that in mind, I think that it is the crowning point of Hollywood from the horror aspect. I'm sure there's scarier films that people can talk about, but these definitely hit the top of the list. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, so do you think that these films that I've touched on, are they on the top of your list? Or perhaps maybe they're lower down? What movie makes it to the top of your list? Well, if you need to go find out and do some digging, somewhere in there, I'm sure you're probably going to be talking about it with other people as you find out, right? Well, if you do, hopefully somewhere in there, you might find yourself talking with me. Where else? Friday Night Dark at nitrax.com. Hey, this is Drew, and I bid you good night.